As it turns out, we didn't really say bye-bye to the cast of American Pie. Here's what they've all been up to since appearing in the 1999 classic. Jason Biggs was the actor tasked with bringing that infamous apple pie moment to life, and we can only imagine he had a million questions for his director before doing the deed. That's probably true of most of his scenes in American Pie because more than any other character, Jim suffers the brunt of the film's angsty teen indignities.
Again?
Not again. Not again, man.
Is that possible?
Whatever the case, one has to admire Biggs' dedication to enduring those indignities, and he leans so fully into every salacious moment that you simply can't imagine American Pie without him. While American Pie indeed made the relatively unknown Biggs a star, he's had trouble replicating such meteoric success in the years since. Still, the actor has made a mark in the entertainment biz, carving out a career with films including Loser, Saving Silverman, and Who We Are Now, as well as memorable work on Netflix's prison dramedy, Orange is the New Black. More recently, Biggs starred on two short-lived series, the Fox Family sitcom Outmatched and the 2021 e-game show Jason Biggs, Cash at Your Door. While American Pie is essentially about a bunch of horny dudes trying to score, it was also one of the first horny dudes movies that fully acknowledged that horny girls exist too. And even if it clearly objectifies some of its female characters, American Pie really did better than most teen sex flicks in depicting its female characters as fiercely intellectual human beings with desires of their own.
I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna have sex.
Now.
And it's gonna be right, and it's gonna be just perfect.
Perfect sex.
Thank you.
Please.
Alyson Hannigan's flute-playing band geek Michelle is one of the film's female characters most distinctly in the middle of that equation, mostly because American Pie doesn't initially paint her as an object of desire. That quickly changes when she drops that shocking line about the intimate nature of her relationship with her flute. At that wholly unexpected turn, she actually becomes the adorable band-loving sexpot that cinema didn't know it needed.
What's my name? Say my name,
Michelle.
Of course, out of all the young stars in the original American Pie, Hannigan was likely the one who needed little introduction to the film's target audience because she'd already made a splash on the small screen via Buffy the Vampire Slayer as Willow Rosenberg. Of the film's cast, Hannigan is also the one who scored the biggest post-Pie hit, joining another all-star comedy ensemble for the primetime juggernaut known as How I Met Your Mother. Of all the young men who got their big break in American Pie, Chris Klein was the one most primed for superstardom. That's largely because he's got chiseled, leading man looks, but it helps that he's a better-than-average actor, has solid comedic timing, and can even belt out a tune with the best of them.
Yeah, magic.
And as it happens, 1999 was the year Klein seemed most destined for fame, with winning turns in both American Pie as Oz the hunky but sensitive jock, and in Critical Fave Election as Paul, the lovably dim-witted football player. However, American Pie was clearly the more high-profile project, and Klein rode the initial wave of stardom to a leading role in the sci-fi action remake Rollerball, as well as largely underseen supporting turns in We Were Soldiers and Just Friends. Soon after that Just Friends appearance, Chris Klein further lost his way in Hollywood, spending much of the mid-2000s appearing in forgettable films and series too numerous to recount. Klein finally started to turn things around with a supporting turn performance opposite Elijah Wood in the Gonzo FX dramedy Wilfred. Since then, he's gone on to deliver work in the CW hit The Flash and on Netflix's warm and fuzzy hit Sweet Magnolias as Dr. Bill Townsend. Mena Suvari had a fantastic 1999, and not just because she played Michelle in American Pie. She also played Angela in future Best Picture winner American Beauty, which was ironically released just after Suvari's other 1999 offering, American Virgin, since renamed Live Virgin. Clearly, 1999 was an all-American year for Mena Suvari at the cinemas, and as it happens, she played a virginal teen in all three of those films, though most would agree her Michelle in American Pie was the most honorable. It was also the role that put the actor's piercing vulnerability front and center and allowed her to craft as earnest a portrait of teenaged tenderness as the screen has seen.
Pause, I know.
In fact, Suvari has spent much of her career trying to shed that innocent persona, a task made more difficult given her own fragile features. She's often succeeded in that endeavor, though, with edgier turns in films like Sugar and Spice, Edmund, and Factory Girl. While Suvari has some movies on the horizon, she's appeared frequently on the small screen over the years, playing in 6 Feet Under, Chicago Fire, American Woman, and American Horror Story since her American Pie breakout. If Alyson Hannigan was the female cast member of American Pie who needed little introduction to fans, it's safe to say Thomas Ian Nicholas was her male counterpart. Of all the up-and-coming talent in American Pie, he was the only one who could count himself a full-on child star, having already spent a decade in front of the camera before appearing as Kevin in the film.
Oh, that's great, man. That's awesome.
Nicholas's career pre-Pie is fairly impressive, with the actor earning credits on Who's the Boss, Baywatch, and Married with Children before he was even 10 years old. He'd also scooped a big screen credit in Radio Flyer before fronting Rookie of the Year and Disney's A Kid in King Arthur's Court. As it was, American Pie was really the first adult role in Thomas Ian Nicholas's career, and the actor made the most of the moment, crafting one of the more amiable, horny screen teens in recent cinema. Once he got a taste of more adult fare, Nicholas never looked back to his family-friendly beginnings. He scored complex roles in the likes of The Rules of Attraction, Stealing Sinatra, and indies like Please Give. Most recently, he portrayed Walt Disney in Walt Before Mickey and legendary director Martin Scorsese in James Franco's star-studded indie Zeroville. Tara Reid's pre-Pie resume wasn't super impressive, but she'd still scored scene-stealing turns in Urban Legend, Cruel Intentions, and something like 2 scenes in the Coen brothers' immortal classic, The Big Lebowski.
Bran can't watch, though, or he has to pay $100.
That's marvelous.
Still, her work as Vicky displayed a depth many hadn't seen from Reid before, one which both male and female fans of American Pie could easily relate to. Reid seemed destined for stardom after the film's release and reinforced her name with roles in underperforming flicks like Dr. T and the Women, Josie and the Pussycats, and National Lampoon's Van Wilder. And don't forget her funny arc on Scrubs.
We'd still die.
We'd still what?
If the elevator cable snapped, even if we timed it out perfectly and jumped up right before impact, we'd still be crushed to death. I wish I'd taken the stairs.
However, like many of her American Pie co-stars, Reid had some trouble in the mid-2000s. Nevertheless, she's become a regular fixture of B-movies and schmaltzy Christmas flicks, and made an appearance as herself in Amazon's hyper-violent superhero satire, The Boys. Natasha Lyonne stole the show as the gloriously quippy intellectual Jessica, projecting attitude, wit, and genuine warmth well beyond her years.
Oh, Kev. Comprende?
You mean an orgasm?
You got it, stud.
Of course, those who'd been tracking the actor's career prior to American Pie were already familiar with her sardonic charm, thanks largely to her breakout turn the year prior in the classic indie comedy Slums of Beverly Hills. However, things have been a bit complicated in the years since American Pie for Lyonne, with the actor's personal and professional life seeing plenty of ups and downs. But even in spite of the struggles, Lyonne is perhaps the Pie star with the highest batting average when the camera's rolling, stealing scenes in indie flicks such as But I'm a Cheerleader, Die Mommy Die, and Ad Astra. She's also appeared in television series like New Girl, Weeds, and all manner of projects in between. Lyonne is probably best known for her heartbreaking work on Netflix's prison dramedy Orange is the New Black, a role that truly breathed new life into her career. It came courtesy of a daring and skillful performance in the serial comic series Russian Doll. Did somebody say actors who've seen their share of ups and downs since their American Pie breakthrough? Because Sean William Scott has certainly seen his. Scott made his big screen debut in the film, turning what might have been little more than a supporting turn as the token teen movie jerk into a career-defining triumph of cinematic smarm.
No way!
Steve, you could at least look at me when you say that.
In Scott's hands, Stifler was a teen movie jerk for the ages, with the actor indulging in enough stilted attitude, boorish entitlement, and vulgar language to make a mean girl blush. So good was Scott in the role, and in ensuing sequels, that it's safe to assume he'll never fully break free from Stifler's surprisingly long shadow.
Can I get a hallelujah? Hallelujah, Stifler!
That hasn't stopped him from trying, however. The actor spent much of the 2000s on the verge of superstardom, appearing in numerous classic comedies such as Old School, Dude, Where's My Car, and Road Trip. But every time he seemed to take a step forward, there was another Bulletproof Monk or Mr. Woodcock to knock him back to. Personal demons eventually caught up with Scott, however, and save for 2011's misfit hockey marvel Goon, the 2010s were a rough stretch. He's been on the rebound, though, with a return to the animated wilds of the Ice Age franchise, a Goon sequel, and a starring role as a small-town minister on the Fox comedy Welcome to Flatch. While American Pie broke a little ground in the teen sex comedy genre by giving the ladies their due, it's still very much a film focused on the male characters. That means there's a lot of objectification going on, and Shannon Elizabeth's foreign exchange student Nadia is ground zero for most of it. So much so that she doesn't have much dialogue in the film, and what she does have leans heavily into the realm of male fantasy.
I could change clothes at your place.
Yeah.
As it is, if American Pie were made today, it's possible Nadia wouldn't even be in it. But she is, and if we're being completely honest, Shannon Elizabeth does her best to make her more of an actual human being than the script ever bothers to. Unfortunately, not many filmmakers have seen past her looks over the years, which means there aren't many standout roles on her post-Pie resume. She was, however, in Kevin Smith's Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, and its recent sequel. She also scored a recurring role on That 70s Show, and she scored some laughs in Scary Movie. Plus, she got to give Nadia some much-needed refining in the 2012 Misfire American Reunion. Eddie K. Thomas showed legit comic chops as Paul Finch, aka the wisdom-seeking know-it-all in American Pie. Thomas has more than kept himself busy in the years since Finch infamously did the pool table mambo with Stifler's mom in the waning moments of the first film.
Women, like a fine wine, only get better with age.
Like virtually all his co-stars, Thomas returned for 3 American Pie sequels. He also landed a steady gig providing the high-pitched voice of comically troubled teen Barry, as well as various minor characters, in nearly 100 episodes of the long-running animated comedy American Dad. He featured prominently in the Harold and Kumar franchise as well. But aside from those projects, there are a few near misses spotting his resume, such as Till Death and Tom Green's Freddy Got Fingered. Most famously, Kaye spent 4 years portraying Dr. Toby Quinn Curtis, a super genius crime solver on the CBS crime procedural Scorpion. Older viewers who saw American Pie when it hit theaters in 1999 were likely already familiar with Eugene Levy, who portrayed Jim's progressive and understanding to a fault dad.
Well, we'll just tell your mother that we ate it all.
An influential major comedy star in the 1970s and early 1980s, Levy was an original prominent cast member on various SCTV late-night sketch shows produced in his native Canada. This earned him supporting roles in several major 80s comedy movies, including National Lampoon's Vacation, Splash, Club Paradise, and Armed and Dangerous. After acting steadily in numerous little-heralded and little-watched projects, American Pie proved to be a major comeback vehicle for Levy. He would go on to appear in all the official American Pie sequels and even anchor 3 direct-to-video raunchy comedies under the American Pie Presents banner. Levy co-starred opposite Steve Martin in Bringing Down the House and alongside Samuel L. Jackson in The Man. And he was a pivotal part of Christopher Guest's troupe of improv-adept comic actors in the mockumentaries Best in Show, A Mighty Wind, and For Your Consideration. But Levy's most recent success overshadows everything else, even American Pie. With his son, Dan Levy, he created the riches to rags Canadian sitcom Schitt's Creek. He starred as Johnny Rose, a role that won him an Emmy Award when Schitt's Creek swept the comedy portion of the ceremony in 2020. Aside from the original Harold and Kumar trailer, there aren't many reminders that John Cho was in American Pie.
New Line Cinema presents That Asian Guy from American Pie.
But whether you realize it or not, he's one of the reasons you know what a MILF is.
MILF. Mom, I'd like to
Yeah, dude.
John Cho was indeed one of the so-called MILF guys in American Pie, though he also popped up in a couple of vocal jazz group scenes. While Cho would go on to a bigger role and actually be credited as John in subsequent American Pie sequels, his MILF chanting moment in the original flick is likely the first time most moviegoers took note of the actor. His career has shifted dramatically in the years since, with Cho scoring a co-lead opposite Kal Penn in the stoner cult classic Harold and Kumar franchise. He's also featured prominently in the recent Star Trek movies and landed charming one-off turns in TV hits like New Girl and How I Met Your Mother. Most recently, however, Cho has made a name for himself on the indie scene via lauded films like Columbus, Gemini, and Searching. He also played the iconic Spike Spiegel in the short-lived live-action reboot of the anime classic Cowboy Bebop. When she appeared as an object of lust and desire, aka Stifler's mom in American Pie, Jennifer Coolidge wasn't well known outside of comedy circles. She'd appeared on the short-lived mid-90s network sketch comedy show She TV and had popped up in Seinfeld and A Night at the Roxbury.
What's up?
Not much. Just giving you an $80 ticket.
She is so into you.
But American Pie, along with Christopher Guest's 2000 semi-improvised mockumentary Best in Show, would provide Coolidge back-to-back career breaks, showcasing her skill at playing kooks, weirdos, and ditzes. You most likely remember her role as the friendly manicurist and confidant Paulette in both popular Legally Blonde movies. She eventually re-teamed with Guest for A Mighty Wind and For Your Consideration, while also reprising her role as Stifler's mom in the American Pie sequels. She portrayed Joey's agent on the Friends spin-off Joey, joined the cast of Two Broke Girls, and earned rave reviews for her more dramatic work on the HBO Vacation from Hell miniseries The White Lotus.